Hey everybody, we will get started in just a minute. I'm just trying to get the Facebook stream started. Welcome to Harmony and my bourbon event. It's been a while since we've done one of these, so it's going to be fun to get back at it. Before we get into everything, I figure I might as well just mention the other tastings that are coming up since we did launch a bunch, and keep an eye out because we are going to be launching some more pretty soon here. So I'll just share my screen here. So we've got the bourbon one we're on, which we did run out of kits on, although it does say we have numbers left for some reason. We have an in-store tasting for Tomatin Distillery with Scott Fraser from Tomatin, who's coming over. He'll be here for the MS Whiskey Festival, which is next week as well, but he's doing a tasting with us before that. Still some tickets left for that, including a chance to try the Tomatin Decades 2 and the new releases of the Kubakan line, which we haven't seen in store for quite a while. So that'll be a lot of fun. After that, there's a few more tickets left for 2 weeks from now, the Burns Bash, which will be fun, especially if you're missing the MS Festival next week. Intro to Spain on the wine tasting side of things is in store, and that's the day after the Burns Bash. And then we have a virtual tasting on the 31st, which is Independence Day whiskey bargain hunting. This is a lineup, I believe that was it Kurt that chose this one?
It was a combination of Andrew and I, actually.
Oh, cool.
We're looking at some things. We made some adjustments along the way, considering, independent bottlings and what is good value.
Yeah.
So it should be a fun one. There's some old whiskeys in there and some surprisingly flavorful young whiskeys as well.
Yeah,
so.
there's I can see my favorite Tianinic in there up top, so that's very, very cool. That Cameron Bridge is no slouch as well, so that'll be a lot of fun. We do have the Scotch Malt Whisky Society tastings up for both February and March, online and offline in stores, so you can take a look at those. The Bruichladdich tasting, we actually doubled the amount we were planning on pouring by doubling the amount of bottles. This gets you a chance to try the Octomore 13 series, which is really cool. I'm looking forward to trying that one as well as the always sought after Black Art. The current one is in there too. After that, this one's going to be a lot of fun. Sponge-worthy whiskeys with Angus McRailed. For those of you that haven't heard of the Whiskey Sponge, he's a really cool guy that has a very quirky sense of humor and doesn't mind taking the piss out of the industry. He's ran the Whiskey Sponge blog for quite a while, and he's the second reviewer and only other reviewer on a website that I've followed for decades now, which is Whiskey Fun, along with Serge Valentin. He has his own independent bottling that he's set up, and he's got some crazy interesting stuff in there, including a 1990 Ardbeg and a 1995 Springbank. Hence the $150 for that virtual tasting, but some very, very cool whiskeys. I hope to sit on that one myself.
Yeah, even the older Glenlivet there is like intriguing to me. I know like the mainstream core bottlings don't really do it for us avid drinkers at 40%, but to see an independent Glenlivet, to me, it's always exciting.
Absolutely. And then not to be outdone, Sean and probably you, I know, now that he's back, we'll be doing a Why Are So Many Rums Named Ron rum tasting virtually. I just tried that South Pacific up top today, and it is really cool stuff. We are kind of in a lucky time for independent bottlings for rum, because we've got 3 or 4 really cool bottlers, including Boutique, but also Valencian Mallet, Aston Morris or Rasta Morris in this case, and Whiskey Agency and Whiskey Sponge as well, that have been sourcing some very, very cool in single casks of rum from around the world that we'll get to try there. After that, it'll be Whiskey and Chocolate, which is an in-store tasting, and the Lost in Translation Japanese whiskey tasting, which includes 2 limited releases from Nika, both from Yoichi and Miyagikyo, which sound super interesting to try out there. Bladnoch tasting is another one where this has kind of been one Harmony's been wanting to do for quite a while, and I'm hoping to sit on that one as well, just because I haven't had a chance to try through Bladnoch's lineup yet. And there's a lot of people saying that there's some really good stuff from this Lowland distillery right now. So that's really cool to see. There are more tastings coming up beyond that, Boutique 10th anniversary and the 30 for 30 on the 30th, which includes some older whiskey, including an official Springbank 30 and Bowmore 30 and Glengoyne 30, which is just crazy. So yeah, take a look at that, and we'll get going with the virtual tasting now, I think. Now that Jeff's here, I guess we can carry on.
Yeah.
So take it away, Harmony.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. It's I don't get to see familiar faces, but I see familiar names, which is great. We have a lot of great American whiskeys to try today. Thank you, Evan. He's going to put up the lineup. We did a less official chat format today. We're going to start with the Rossville Union Mastercraft Rye, followed by the Wiseman Kentucky Straight Bourbon, the independently bottled Heaven Hill by Cadenhead, then the Boutique Bourbon 24-year, Leopold Bros Bottled and Bond, Redwood Empire Grizzly Beast Bottled and Bond, and then we'll finish with the Doc Swinsons Exploratory Cask. So for some of you that don't know, I had COVID over the new year, and I'm just slowly starting to get my smell and taste back. So Evan was kind enough to put this lineup together a few days ago. At the time, I smelled them all and I just nodded and said, yeah, I guess it's good, because I couldn't smell anything. Today, I think, is the first day in about 2 weeks where I can actually smell things. I walked to work today behind two women with very unpleasant perfume, but I smelled them. So that was like, as much as I didn't enjoy the walk, it was exciting. I'm like, my nose is working. I stopped and got a coffee and I could smell it. So I just nosed the first couple, and this rye smells beautiful. It's nice and spicy and lots of red fruit, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying the rest of the whiskeys tonight. Hopefully I can taste and smell them as we go along.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this too. This is Harmony put together most of this lineup. I had a little bit of input, but it's been hers to run with, which is always exciting to get another bourbon lover online to do these as well. And I've really enjoyed doing these bourbon tastings with Harmony, so it's fun to do it again. We'll have to hopefully plan another one. I think we might do a bourbon in-store and virtual one for the next part of maybe in March and April, just because they are so much fun to do, and there's a lot of bourbon that we need to crack and explore, because we haven't had a chance to do so yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of bourbons and ryes out there that are hitting the market right now that that we've seen on social media for forever, and now they're finally coming to Canada, which is cool. But also just extensions within lines that we've already explored, seeing new releases and new expressions. It's always fun to revisit distilleries or bottlings that we've enjoyed in the past. Yeah, and with the current markets these days, it's better to do them sooner than later before prices go up.
That's right.
I saw one of the bottles I've been eyeballing went up $20 a bottle, and that hurt my heart. I figure we should put it in a tasting soon. But until then, I digress. We'll convert back to our first whiskey, the Rossville Union. So the Rossville Union was opened by George Ross. He opened a distillery called Ross and Squibb Distillery in 1847 in a small town of Lawrenceburg. And while Kentucky is known for its bourbon, Lawrenceburg is known to do rye better than anyone else in the country. And for over 200 years, they've been mastering the distillation of rye. They do produce other spirits, other styles. They produce lots for independent bottlings, but they pride themselves on being a master of rye, which is very cool. They're also along the Ohio River, which gives them great access to, distribution around the world. And then they're also conveniently located on top of an aquifer. So they get this beautifully naturally filtered limestone water with low to no sulfur iron content, which I think will help with the taste of the whiskey, especially for those of you who are sensitive to sulfur. I luckily am not one of those people, but by removing those sulfur and iron notes, we can, get to the core of the spirit itself and to get those bold, spicy flavors that we know and love out of rye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been hard to get used to the idea of MGP not being called MGP distillers, but they are Ross and Squibb distillers now, and MGP kind of has gone through a rebranding company wide, except at least for their alcohol arm, because they bought another company called Luxco about a year and a half or 2 years ago now. Which actually makes Luxco a really big player quickly on the whiskey market, even though they've been around for about 70 years or so. Luxco, of course, has a bunch of different whiskey brands and different alcohol brands. They're kind of almost like a miniature version of Heaven Hill in a way. And for a long time, their source was Heaven Hill for a lot of their whiskeys, including Rebel Yell, which has been rebranded recently as Rebel. And Ezra Brooks is another one of theirs as well. But now they're kind of the distribution arm and some of the marketing arm for the whiskey for MGP / Ross and Squibb, plus 2 distilleries in Kentucky beyond that.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard to get used. I mean, MGP just like rolls off the tongue when you're talking about it. And now you got this Ross and Squibb, and it's like, I've never said Squibb in my life until today. So it's going to be hard to get, to break the habit, but then also you're going to say, oh, it's made by Ross and Squibb, which means MGP if you didn't know.
And then you have to try and remember what MGP stands for again.
It stands for Ross and Squibb.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So yeah, as we're tasting this, and as Harmony mentioned, Ross and Squibb is prolific when it comes to rye and bourbon. They are, in my opinion, they've been essentially the source for other producers of rye whiskey or other bottlers of rye whiskey, where typically if it comes from a new up and coming brand, it's going to say produced in Indiana, and that means MGP distillery, or it's going to say produced in Canada, which is typically Alberta distillers for their rye. That's
right. Yeah. I mean, it's quite incredible. Like when we do tastings like this, we get to look back at the beginning. And at the beginning, they were producing a very respectable 2 barrels a week with their one horse. They had a 1 horse running a mill that would, grind all the rye into a grist, and then it would take, with the methods they had with fermentation and distillation, 2 hearty barrels of rye a week. And now you look at them and they're producing hundreds a week. And even so, 100 years ago, they had over 60,000 barrels stored away, which is still quite remarkable. There's distilleries out now that don't have that many, that have been around for 10 years. So, I mean, I imagine their stockpile today is probably in the millions, but even though looking back, we're tasting 170 years in the making, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Has anyone sipped this whiskey or nosed it and have any comments so far?
Yeah, so along with that, so combination wise, this isn't, so the mash bill that makes MGP or made MGP famous, or Ross and Squibb, pardon me, is their 95% rye, 5% malted barley mash bill. So this contains the 95% rye mash bill, but it also contains some of their much lower 51% rye mash bill in its makeup. And then it's aged for about 5 years before being bottled at 47% alcohol. So it does have some of that nice sort of like earthy, dusty rye note. Doesn't go into as much of the lemon and lime jujube notes that I get off a lot of Alberta distillers stuff. Does have some mint and dill in behind there though.
Yeah, definitely. I think. I do get a lot of like cherries or
Yeah,
red berry
still the big
notes.
time cherries for sure. That's a good call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they
This
do a
spice is
barrel
nice.
strength version of this too, but it's
Yeah,
not
they
here
do
yet.
have a barrel strength. I hope it comes
Yeah.
our way eventually. But I think still at 47, there's a little
Mhm.
heat growing as you let it settle. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 5 years. It's not incredibly old, but it's still a nice, robust little rye.
Yep. That's still teen years by American whiskey standards.
Yeah,
But yeah, it kind of runs in between sort of the drier style, as I think of it, and the more licorice driven style of like a Rittenhouse rye.
yeah,
Uh, and sometimes the Dickel rye gets a lot of that more big, robust, minty, dry style as well. But this one runs a little bit sweeter, where you're getting a little bit of more of that corn at play too. It's really well balanced.
yeah. It's really nice, and like maybe like a hint of like wood smoke or something in there. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, I
yeah.
could see that. There is just a bit of that barrel char and baking spice coming through on the palate. That's a good starter.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, so we tamed it down. I know in the past, Evan and I have done bourbon tasting, and we throw 3 or 4 ryes at you, call it a bourbon tasting. We were respectable this time. That's our only rye today. So apologies, and you're welcome,
Yeah,
depending on who you are.
yeah. We totally promised to put a bunch of single malt American whiskey and rye whiskeys in our next American whiskey tasting or bourbon tasting.
I would sign up for that. Ryes and single malts.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Man, there's so many tastings we could do right now. I was even saying to Evan, with some of the changeover in master distillers in the bourbon world, just based on what the master distillers have done and worked on in the past, we could do tastings on 3 or 4 distilleries.
Yeah.
Just based on like one person. Same could be said in the Scotch world as well. If
Yep.
you look at like Billy Walker or Rachel Berry, you could try 100 whiskeys just based on what those two have touched in their
Heck,
lifetime.
we could do the Beam family tree tasting and still just pour every bourbon available.
Yeah.
It wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. I don't know if Jeff would come to that though.
Yeah, he's on the fence. He'd have to see the lineup first.
That's right. All right. Well, let's jaunt on to our next one, which is a Kentucky Owl, their latest creation, which is the Wiseman. It's a straight bourbon, and yeah, let's see what I've dug up on this. Not used to having you put my PowerPoint. Here we go. So yeah, there's a little bit of information for y'all who like to read. Interesting thing about this one is this is like a 6th family run generation type thing. So the Kentucky Owl started many years ago with a man with a dream, as many of these things do. And oh shoot, I just closed my notes. But what I remember is the gentleman started Kentucky Owl distillery pre-prohibition, and it was his dream. And of course, he gets up, he sets up, and he's running, and he's making, you know, blending and making great whiskeys. In the late so 1879. And then Prohibition came, and he lost 2,500,000 gallons was seized by the government. So all of his work, Charles Mortimer Diedman, all his work was taken, and then conveniently, as many as it happened to many, the whiskey that was seized by the government and stored in these warehouses, somehow caught fire, and all of their whiskey reserves were destroyed. And we've heard this many times throughout history of people, having their whiskey seized, and then it's like, oh, something happened. So that happened to Mr. Deedman as well. And frankly, he was done. That was his life's work. It was all his money and his savings, and it all went up in smoke when the government burned it down. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the end for him. He had other passions, and he worked on an inn. I think Evan and I were talking about this earlier today. Yeah. They built a family at an inn that's been around for like 200 years. And that's where he kind of put his focus and his passions moving forward. So 100 years later, the great-great-grandson, C.M. Deedman, revives the family business, and he starts out by blending sourced whiskey from Kentucky, probably Ross and Squibb, if I had to guess. So he begins mixing, and his first mix is a label that's been reused as something that we see more and more as the beige label with the wispy Kentucky owl on it. Yeah. And that was a 6-year blend that they put together. And he ran that program, created a few bottlings, nothing super crazy, but was more focused on consistency and trying to create that consistent Kentucky Owl brand. At the same time, still running that family inn. And of course, that family inn has to be his main priority. Just a couple of years ago, he passed that responsibility of making whiskey on to a new master distiller. And so now today they have a new master distiller. And where the heck is that? Somewhere. I have his name. Is it on the PowerPoint?
Was it John Rhee?
Yeah, that's the J. Yeah. That's his name. Maybe you can share that one. John Rhee, I might have a photo of him, maybe not. But yeah, so now we move into what this is today. It's a blend of 4 and 5.5 year whiskey and an 8.5 year bourbon. So all these bourbons are blended, and it is an undisclosed distillery because they're not distilling, they're just bottling the name. Yeah, straight bourbon, so older than 4 years.
Yeah, I wanted to point out too, while we're talking about this, this is the bottle for the Wiseman here, that you guys can hopefully see there. But the 3 pyramids down here, this is, I believe, either is or it's going to be the Kentucky Owl Distillery when they finally finish it. Kentucky Owl got a massive influx of cash and capital because they were purchased by the Stoli Group of Stolichnaya vodka fame. And the Stoli Group is kind of going whole hog when it comes to putting in a distillery in Kentucky so that they can have their own juice going forward.
Very cool. I knew they were building,
mm-hmm.
Dreaming of building at least. I didn't know that they had already put it on the label, but it's very cool.
Yeah, I don't know if it's all in operation. I couldn't find that out, but they've had plans for it for at least a couple of years now.
Yeah.
I actually just I didn't even notice that until I blew up the bottle shot here just to take a look at it.
Now I want to see what else is on this label. There's a lot of different crests.
Yep.
And it looks like a lot of just deconstructed old labels that they've done over the history. In the past, I would say 3 years, I've seen more Kentucky Owl bottlings released than I have in my entire time in the industry.
And a lot of them are expensive too.
Yeah. Well, I hope for those prices, it's not just greed, but they're blending in some older whiskeys. I mean, this
Yeah.
one for even having 8.5 is, I think, quite a remarkable feat. I don't know
Yep.
how much of it is actually in the mash bill because they just don't disclose that. But you just don't get a lot of old whiskey. And when you do get older whiskey, you're looking at $150 plus for a 10-year.
Yeah.
Right.
So our fact checker, Jeff, has said construction to start in 2024, completion in 2025 is the hope. So very cool to see. Stefan says the first few batches of Kentucky Owl were top notch. We did have the confiscated in tasting, I think about 2 years ago or so. And the confiscated was quite good. The rumor on it that I saw online that it was mostly Old Forester juice or from what would have been called the Old Forester Distillery / Brown Forman Distillery in Shively, Kentucky. I assumed it was a lot of Barton in there, but I was probably wrong. But Barton and Old Forester, in a lot of cases, are one of the bigger sources for a lot of the source bourbon to come from Kentucky itself.
Very cool. Now I haven't tried that. I saw they did an Irish edition.
Yeah, which is a St.
label.
Patty's edition, which was
A
interesting.
St. Patty's.
Yeah.
And I was so curious to try it, but they are expensive, and so I didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, I was curious about that too. If we had more space on our shelves, maybe we'd bring it in. But so Stefan
for me,
says,
this one, the nose is more muted.
Yeah, Stefan said the older batches were cast strength MGP. This one does say Kentucky straight on it, so everything is coming from Kentucky. I think the confiscated said that as well, but I could be wrong. Jamie says getting a peanut note. I don't remember getting in the confiscated. Good call. It does go into that peanuts and beer nuts sort of note to it, into a slight praline note as well, with that sort of toffee and butterscotch and corn sweetness coming through there.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not getting anything.
All good. We'll get to the cast strength stuff or the higher strength stuff soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried about a week ago. No, it wouldn't have been that long. Maybe 4 or 5 days ago. I was pouring some samples for a friend because he poured me a sample of a Weller, and he's like, "Have you tried it? Have you tried it?" And I was like, "No, I've had COVID. I'm not going to waste it. I'll try it when I can taste." And so I was preparing him some samples from my bar, and I had have about just maybe a quarter bottle of the Octomore 12.3 left. And I was like, "Oh, I'll pour him some of this," and I'm pouring it in the bottle. I'm like, I can't smell it. Like, how can I not smell this? Like every time I open the cork, my boyfriend's like, "Open the door. That's disgusting. What are you doing?" So I poured myself a glass, and I'm trying to can't smell it at all. And I took a sip, and it's like 56%. And it was like 10 seconds later, I was like, "Oh, it's hot."
Yeah.
I couldn't taste anything, and I did not continue drinking because that's wasteful.
Yeah. Octomore could be an unofficial COVID test, because if you can't smell that, then you might just have COVID.
Yeah, it was really disappointing.
Yeah.
I really wanted to have a drink, but there's really no point.
Yeah. The Kentucky Owl is quite nice. It's got this great combination of sweet and smooth. I really like the sort of peanut brittle and toffee and butterscotch notes that come through for me there.
Yeah, I can smell some sweetness, that, like that bourbon corn sweetness, but unfortunately that's all I'm getting on that. That's all right. All right, Maybe we'll open up as we move along.
Well,
that's
hopefully
okay,
you can nose and
it's quite muted.
Yeah. It is muted versus some of the other stuff we'll get into, and I'm hoping the nose on the next one shows as well as it has in the past for me, because I really like this one.
Yeah, this is Sean really likes this at the shop too. He's mentioned several times that he really enjoys the next one. So let's do it. On to the next one. We have a Cadenhead, which is a Scottish independent bottler, and they've chosen to bottle a 12-year-old Heaven Hill, which we've talked about. So it's quite light in color compared to even the first two whiskeys that we tried. It's very, very gold. I can't smell it either. Now I'm not as versed with Heaven Hill as I would like to be. It's just not
Mhm.
something that we get to see very often. And when we
Yeah,
do, it's always a lotto. There's always a lineup of people around the
yeah,
block trying to get their hands on it. I think the last one that I saw was it was a bottled in bond Heaven Hill that I saw come
yeah,
in the market, and it
yeah. Because
was
it used to be, I think it was a 6-year-old, wasn't it? If I remember
yeah.
correctly for the last one.
I barely saw it. I remember like unpacking the boxes and then opening the door, and then 6 bottles later, it was gone. It was just gone.
Yeah,
But
so this Heaven Hill, it was bottled in Scotland by Cadenhead. It probably spent some of its life maturing there. We don't know how much of its time. I don't think we know how much of its time it actually spent in the United States versus Scotland. But there's definitely a Scottish influence warehouse wise on what we're getting here, where it's a little bit mellower versus your typical bourbon at 12 years old.
well, and I was wondering as well, because I couldn't find anywhere on the label or online about it being called a straight bourbon,
Yeah,
which leads me to believe that maybe it was purchased quite young
yeah,
and did
it very
most
well
of
could
its
have been.
aging in Scotland. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and as Stefan mentioned, there with I think it was he's right. It was a 20-year-old Heaven Hill a few years ago, and that one was I remember having the heel of that bottle after it was sold out, and it was very very good. The next one that we're gonna try after this kind of reminds me of that one on the nose that we had from Cadenhead. But 12 years old for Heaven Hill is very cool. We do get stuff that would have some of that age to it. Sometimes like we got 3 bottles of Old Fitzgerald, which was approaching that age. I think the last one we had was a 10-year-old. But Heaven Hill is, of course, very prolific. It's a massive distillery and one of the bigger family-owned whiskey companies in the United States. This would be post-fire Heaven Hill, so this wasn't made in Bardstown. This would have been made in and distilled at their Bernheim distillery, which they purchased after their distillery in just outside of Bardstown did burn down in 97 or 98 or something like that.
Okay. Well, I know that Heaven Hill makes quite the lineup of
Mhm.
products, from like Larceny to the Rittenhouse, which you mentioned, and the McKenna, which won, I think, a
Yeah,
best whiskey of the year.
that I
Um,
wish we got up here. I've had one bottle of Henry McKenna, and it's a 10-year-old bottled and blonde, and it's awesome.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And what I do love about their history too is like how much, like how long their staff stays around. Like not only is it's family owned and family run, but their distillers, Jody, he's been around since 81, so 36 years with the company. Before he brought on a trainee to train. So now their new master distiller, Connor, has been distilling as master distiller since 2019. So, I mean, I know when you have a brand like Heaven Hill, there's going to be some consistency and standards in place, but there also has to be
Mhm.
some flexibility for that character of the master distiller to shine through.
Yeah.
Possibly maybe a new bottling that might come out down the road that would be signature to the new distiller. So I think it's exciting when we see changes like this. Like I
Mhm.
get excited anyway.
Absolutely.
It'd be nice if we had more of their products.
Yeah.
But the ones like I've had Larceny before, and that's just an easy drinking,
Yeah.
good product. The old John Fitzgerald, so it's part of that Fitzgerald
Yeah.
family, which is pretty cool.
Well, and then there's the tried and true Evan Williams and Elijah Craig as well. Um,
Absolutely.
and speaking of Elijah Craig, this one on the nose does remind me a little bit of we had our last single cask of Elijah Craig where it got very like a root vegetable and like potatoes right out of the garden heavy.
Oh
And
yeah,
this one does have a hint of that to it where it's really starchy on the nose.
very cool. Sean, when he had it, he said it was like very tropical for him and a little bit of like a
Yeah.
peach cobbler.
Yeah. See
The
that.
tasting notes that I could find, they suggested tropical fruit with a little bit more of like a pina colada
Mhm.
nose to it.
Yeah, the pina colada makes sense to me. That's something that I like. Pina colada and coconut notes is something that comes out with virgin oak a lot for me.
Mhm.
Heaven Hill usually uses number 3 char, which is some places or a lot of companies use strictly number 4. Number 3 is a little bit lighter on the char note, so you get a little bit more of the sometimes the tannin and the wood coming through, and not as big of the char note as well. Maybe that's what lends itself to that root vegetable and peanut note there.
It's funny, I don't taste the root vegetable note, but I get these like tannins that would kind
Yep.
of like remind me of like beets and
Mhm.
stuff like that. Obviously oak tannins as well. But I as limited as my palate, it is quite fruity, quite tropical, and
Mhm.
not so much citrus driven, but definitely like melon and fruit and stone fruit.
Yeah, definitely pretty tropical for something that's like a 12-year-old bourbon. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Stefan says hints of pineapple and melon on the finish. I get the pineapple there for sure.
yeah. Evan, do you have that PowerPoint?
Yeah. You want the master distillers there?
Sure. Yeah, I actually just like the photo of these two.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of like American bourbon, like these two American looking fellows. They're button up shirts, some old wood. They look like nice people.
Yeah.
So
I'm guessing the guy on the right is Jody Filatro, I think is the name. But it's like it almost looks like he came in Dockers and they were like, man, you got to wear denim. So they put him in a denim shirt quickly, just to make it look authentic. But
yeah.
speaking of authenticity, that like you look at the sort of dilapidated old whitewash that's been scraped and scarred look of this, along with the corrugated metal, that is a true Heaven Hill warehouse.
Yeah.
Stephen Andrews had mentioned they always say it smelled like heaven when the employees open it on tasting tours and stuff like that. And I remember the warehouse that we went into, that it looks like that. It's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, I see like those big metal bars. It's like
Yeah.
nothing's getting in or out of there.
Yeah.
You're not taking any whiskey away from anyone.
Yeah, and usually those windows on that floor, it's like they're just they've been either open or closed so long that they just remain like that because you can't move them anymore.
That's fun. That's fun. Yeah, well, I gotta get down to Kentucky one day. I'll go see it all for myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and Stefan makes a good point here too. He says the black stuff on the warehouse exterior is natural mold. That is, and that's coming from the alcohol vapors and stuff that are coming from the whiskey aging there. And so I'll put that picture up again. This is the myth and legend along with this alcohol mold is with this used to be the way the excisemen or lawmakers would find illicit stills in Scotland and Ireland and in the US as they look for trees and stuff in the forest that had the black mold on them. And if you had a big concentration of the black mold growing through and this sort of blackness on the trees itself, that was usually a sign that there was a still nearby that shouldn't be there.
Those sneaky buggers, taking all the fun out of it, hey?
Yeah. So shall we go on to the 24-year-old bourbon?
Yeah, and another independently bottled bourbon of undisclosed origins.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a bottle shot? I don't actually think.
Yeah, I will bring that up. I've got the
bottle is quite interesting. The boutique guys always have something cheeky to say on their label. So this is the I think it's the first batch still. Yeah, whiskey number 1, aged 24 years. It's quite a large release, but you can get that from a vatting, and when you do 500 ml bottles, you can stretch pretty far. The label shows a peaceful scene of Area 51, complete with a sign saying "nothing to see here," which has to be true. It's on the sign, and signs don't lie. Nope, nothing out of the ordinary here, just bottle-shaped crop circles and a Bigfoot and an alien. So completely normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually meant to reference anything. There are a lot of people online that and I'll share that again, actually, just because we're talking about it. But there are people, because I was looking into it more. My guess was pre-fire Heaven Hill, based on the age and the timing, but who knows? This did spend, I did find out, 12 years aging in the US before it was moved, and spent a further 12 years of aging before bottling in Scotland. But there are people that think the crop circles here are a hint. This is the look of either the Four Roses single barrel or the Four Roses old 10-year-old that I never had a chance to try ages ago, and that the 4 crop circles and the 4 either dead birds or they say molehills is a hint to Four Roses as well.
Oh, interesting.
But who knows? They can't say.
I hate that. I hate when they can't say.
Either way, there's not a lot of 24-year-old bourbon out there that you can get. So, and also as a side note to that, and I think I mentioned this to Harmony today, there was a bottling by, I think it was Single Cask Nation, of an undisclosed, and they said Kentucky straight bourbon on theirs, I believe. So that, and it was from a parcel that a lot of people assumed was the same parcel that was, or a similar parcel that was sold to this. They didn't say what it was as well, but they had their label depicted artistically some fires going on in the background, and some warehouses on fire. So maybe pre-fire Heaven Hill.
Ah, could be. I mean, they've been around a long time.
They have been.
Yeah.
Does have that a peanutty note again on the nose for me, but it gets into some great sort of leather and cigar notes as well.
I think I can get a bit of that leathery note.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really relying on you guys in the chat or to unmute yourselves and give me some insight on what this whiskey is telling us. I don't know if I'm gonna have a chance to try this again.
I don't think I have like a proper note. Obviously I can't smell the peanut on it or like taste the peanut on it because of my allergies.
Well, if your lips
like Harmony,
enlarge and turn purple, then that's probably a good sign. So.
yeah, like Harmony, I'm still like not fully tasting things. So
it's delicious.
Yeah. Agreed.
I get a lot more of those kind of spicy peanuts on the palate.
There's a crowd in Invermere enjoying it immensely.
Right
That's
on.
a big group. I love it.
How did you guys manage to split that tasting kit? Like, who draw the short straw?
we have a few.
The guys are doing it and the wives are getting little sips.
Well, the good news is if you like any of these, we can get full size or 500 ml bottles in this case of this.
Wow, that's more interesting.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, the palate on this is really nice.
Yeah, there's some really nice age notes to it.
Got a lot of full flavors in there.
Yeah,
like really full flavors. Like the bottom end of it has a lot. It's almost like what would you call it? I don't know. Well, he doesn't know, so.
It's all good.
Chewy. I like that. Chewy.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You know, that's good. It is a chewy bourbon. Like it's got the body, especially for 48% alcohol. It's got tannin in there to make it a bit dry, but there's that full flavor is definitely there too. Like there's there's almost like a little, you still get the tobacco and leather notes on the palate, or at least I do. There's a little bit of a cherry note in there and going into more of a black forest cake note along with the chocolatiness in there as well. But into some hazelnut notes and even like some maybe it's Cadenhead's Dunnage warehouses are making me think of it, but like that sort of like cooked mushroom note to it, something slightly umami in there on the palate as well.
Yeah, it's actually really good. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I know I'm missing a lot of the notes and a lot of like the mouthfeel of this just in my state, but the finish is very chewy. It's very long. There's a lot going on. I got a hint, like it's not overpowering like some of the other whiskeys I had. I do get a little bit of that pencil shaving note.
Yeah.
I don't know what color, but it's good.
Yeah. Once hold on to the glass. I mean, after your sinuses subside, you'll probably be able to give us the specific Laurentian color that you're getting there.
Yeah, but it's nice, and I mean, Andrew, I think, is one of the biggest fanboys in the world for boutique. I would say he's got quite the collection, probably at home and in store. It's very well represented, and we've had, since the year I've been with Kensington Wine Market, I've received so many phone calls from people looking for this bourbon. Looking for the bourbon with the alien on the label. Like they need it. They got to have it. So I'm happy to say that it's back, and I'm happy that we were able to try it tonight, because I know their releases, are often one and done. So it's kind of cool to have it come back around. With the 500 ml bottlings, I know it kind of miffs some people. They want the full size bottle, but at the same time, just drink it and move on to something else. I think it's a great way to try something. And over the last, few months, we've seen a lot more American whiskey come through, a lot more ryes and undisclosed distilleries, which is pretty cool, and a lot of up and coming distilleries from around the world, which is pretty fantastic that we get to try. So
they have been really good to us too, as you mentioned, where like this was a very hefty release with 8,300 bottles, but that's the reason I thought we'd sold through it and we weren't going to see it again about a year and a half ago, and then we got more of it, which was awesome. But I think this might be some of the last of it in the world. So it was really nice of them to send it our way.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm happy. I hope the people that were calling and looking for it have found it on the website, or saw it on the tasting today, or have at least signed up for Malt Messenger, so they got the newsletter that it was back, maybe if it's not the right time for them to buy. It's not a cheap bourbon, but at 24 years, like it wouldn't be. So
Zach, you're hired. That's a great tasting note.
What is it?
I'm on the case.
He actually said it tasted like dead crow.
I thought that was funny though.
And so I texted Harmony that.
No, but I get a lot of like sweetgrass in like the summertime. I don't know.
Yep. Good call. Jeff's going team nerd on us, and using an actual tea, whereas I use made up teas essentially when I'm using tasting notes. So that's good. Stefan says touch of cinnamon, five spice, I think is a good call as well. Even has a bit of that on the nose where it's got that sort of dry, earthy spiciness to it.
Yeah, that's a great note.
Mm-hmm.
It's changing a lot too in the glass, just like from when I first picked it up to now.
Shannon says she thought those 4 crows were dead wild turkeys. That's good. I like that.
Husbands, if you have not passed your glass to your ladies yet, maybe pass it on so they can at least nose it as it's developing.
That's
here.
right.
It's
That's
quite
right.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. And for Shannon, it's the opposite. Shannon, make sure you share.
So I don't know if this is a good time to be interjecting with this, but we put together some, like a charcuterie board type of thing
Yeah.
that goes well with bourbon. And one of the things I had read, obviously we're not great connoisseurs on this, was that milk chocolate and blue cheese
It's amazing.
together, a little bit of bourbon is
It's amazing.
gold,
So
golden.
good.
So that's what
Nice.
we've been, yeah, it's surprisingly amazing.
The blue cheese makes sense. Like maybe that's where I was going with the mushroom notes that I was getting on this one, and even the previous Heaven Hill, where both of them, and probably because of the maturation in Scotland in some sort of earthen warehouse, both have the slight dunnage note to them, which is really, really neat.
Yeah, we thought the
Not
same.
just not just the full carpentry note that you get on from Kentucky bourbon in a lot of cases.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that you've made an event out of it. You got the food, you got all your friends.
There isn't a whole lot to do in Invermere, so we need to piggyback off you guys.
That's in my opinion, that's the reason to go to Invermere in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. Redneck deluxe, man.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining Invermere. That's fantastic. I love that. I love that we get people from all over to join these tastings.
So shall we go on to the two bondeds?
Yeah, can you just remind me, like, is Boutique, are they situated in Scotland?
So the company itself is, I think their headquarters is London, UK.
Okay.
But they have a bottling line in Scotland and warehouses in Scotland as well.
Okay, I knew they had warehouses and stuff, but I didn't think they were Scottish based.
Yeah.
Which is why I had to ask, because I was confused. Okay, the next one.
Yeah, on to Leopold Brothers, and this one is relatively new to us.
It's very new to us. They've only been around since 1999. They are a family owned and run company, founded by two brothers, Todd and Scott Leopold. Todd has a diploma in malting and brewing, and I believe Scott has a career in like manufacturing. After receiving a BA in economics and a BS in industrial engineering. So together they make a pretty great team to tackle this bourbon world, which is pretty cool.
No kidding.
They've done quite a few expressions that have not made it to our neck of the woods, but this is the first one that's become available in Canada, and it happens to be a bottled and bond, which is very cool. And they're based out of Colorado. This is the bottle here on the back. I don't know if I can show you.
Oh, here, I'll
They
take down the
have
share
a
here.
little-
There.
They have a little sketch of where they come from. This is their distillery, their warehouse. And yeah, so we have here a 5-year 50% bottle and bond, and this is all a spring summer distillation, which is very cool.
Yeah, they're like a few other distilleries in Colorado. They tend to have a little bit of a Scottish bent to them, and not necessarily background of the brothers. As far as I know, they came over from Wisconsin, if I remember correctly, to settle down and put their distillery in Denver. But so they do farm the Brutsy Heritage Rye that's in this. This is 100 proof, 64% corn, 21% malted barley, which is pretty high. And then the 15 of the Abruzzi Rye. The rye is theirs. The corn and the malted and the barley are sourced from Colorado as well. But they're one of the few distilleries in the United States to have their own floor maltings, which is super interesting. And maybe why you get a little bit more of that grassy note coming through on some of the grain, I assume, but maybe I'm wrong. And their warehousing is also dunnage warehousing, where where it's earthen floor and single story. They're not doing the full rickhouse thing like a lot of the distilleries in the US do.
No, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, Colorado has quite I mean, it's a similar environment to ours for the most part,
Yep.
but and we're not too far off from Scotland, minus all the sunny days that we have that they don't. But I think, yeah, you can create some you can age some very cool whiskeys by having that old school style.
Yeah. Jeff says smells like walnut and oak wood. Walnuts is a good call on that. The grassy note is super interesting in this. It's almost like your peach cobbler fell and got mashed into some grass clippings, and then you still tried to eat it. But it does have some of the typical cherry notes, big time corn notes on there as well from the 64% corn. But there also does seem to be a little bit of that earthy dunnage note in there as well, just a little bit brighter than the last two though.
Yeah, I'm getting lots of grass.
Mm-hmm. Really nice mouthfeel on there too. That sort of combination of creaminess and spiciness. Little bit tannic, but also super juicy on the palate with a bit of spice.
I hate
Jamie
when
said,
you get those fleeting tasting notes that are
Yep.
there and they're gone before you can
Yep.
put the words to them.
Jamie says the fresh grass is almost moving into a swimming pool or plastic note for me. I can kind of see where you're going on that. More vinyl than plastic for me for some reason there. It's like a bunch of hay that's sort of getting cooked in the sun, but is kind of hidden under a tarp.
Grass is turning into astroturf. So definitely some nice peppery notes on the finish. Or
Peppery is a good call. Yeah, I really like the sort of the brightness of this one versus the last two older whiskeys we had. Bright without being like just youthful, because it still is 5 years of age, which is nice as well.
Zach had something to say.
Yeah.
Kind of getting like, as strange as it sounds, it's like if you took unpopped popcorn kernels and like crushed them, like if that was a little bit more robust of a scent, that's kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Like
I mean that's a really cool note, and it makes sense because that's almost what they're using for corn in a lot of cases. That's being mashed and fermented with all the other grains. Yeah, Jeff says corn flour and cornmeal, so he's right there with you. The stacks is smells like Bartlett pear, tastes like clementines and lemon peel to bitter almonds. That's a cool note.
yeah, I could see that.
Zach, I think you've been fired. We're gonna have to go with someone else now for their tasting notes.
I'll come back really strong on the next one, I promise.
Yeah, do better.
Sounds good then.
You got 2 more.
Yeah.
Oh, I got this. It's in the bag.
Yeah.
Next
the
time.
gauntlet's been thrown.
I gotta get that nickname sooner.
This is really nice. This is quite different.
See, because
Oh, we're back to it.
No, I'm gonna take my stash off.
No, put it
No,
on.
no,
put it on,
no.
put it on.
Put your stash on.
Right.
We have a competition now?
No, yeah, she's the stash.
Oh, God, that's way better than mine.
What are you talking about? This is real.
Yeah.
This is confusing to look at. I know.
The nice thing about hers is she can run it through the wash every now and then.
I tried. It's just it gets worse.
I'm worried that this could go in a very strange direction.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hop on to the next whiskey, I think.
Yeah. It's okay. We're infotaining. We're doing fine.
No, it's good. It's this bourbon reminds me of another bourbon, and I can't place it, which is very frustrating. But it's definitely unique as far as what we've had so far. It's very different, but something about it is familiar, and part of me is like my inner Cam is coming out, where all bourbons taste the same, and this is
That's right.
tasting like a bourbon I've tried before.
Maybe it'll come to you, but we should compare it to the other bonded, which is coming from another state that starts with C, but from a region that isn't really known for bourbon, that's for sure.
Yeah. So our next one is from a family or a distillery that, Evan, I know you're quite a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've tasted several of the Redwood Empires and previous tastings. And today, this is one of their newest releases. We got 2 releases from them, and this is their Grizzly Beast Bourbon, straight bourbon whiskey, bottled in bond. So 66% corn, 23 rye, 4 barley, 7 wheat, aged 5 years. Super cool label. And then Evan, if you don't mind, for those who don't know, can you talk to us a little bit about what is bottled in bond besides being 5 years old? Seems to be the common trait here.
Yeah, so bottled in bond is a legal term and a legal process in the United States, and it's came from one of the first consumer acts enacted, which was in 1897 in the U.S. And the bottled in bond was essentially a consumer protection act, is what it comes down to. It was to give a term that if you saw it on the label, you understood that the bourbon that you were getting was authentic. It was bottled at the alcohol it said on the label, which has to always be 50% or 100 proof. And you were able to be confident in what you're purchasing because you knew all the ingredients were sourced from one growing season, grain-wise. It was all done in the one distilling season as well, and all came from one distillery. And then once it was distilled, it was aged for at least 4 years in a government bonded warehouse that government agents could go in and actually check and recheck things to make sure that they were actually as they said they were before they were bottled. So this came about in a time where a lot of the bourbon that you get at bars or purchase yourself was sometimes inauthentic, where you purchase it from a pharmacy or you get it directly from a cask in a bar, but you really didn't know where it was coming from. A lot of the time, different chemicals and flavoring agents were used to make it seem older than it was or different than it actually was, where they take some essentially much cheaper grain spirit or grain distillate and then step on it with different flavoring agents such as turpentine and other thing, sometimes formaldehyde as well, if I remember correctly, to make it seem like an old whiskey, to give it that leathery note and make you go blind faster, I guess, at the same time. But so bottled in bond was just something that it's kind of been undergone a resurgence recently, and I like the term because it does give you a whiskey at higher strength. 50% is a good place to start, in my opinion, when it comes to a lot of whiskeys. I love it when it goes up from there as well, but it also tells you that it's going to be at least 4 years old and tell you that it came from that specific distillery as well. Redwood Empire has sourced bourbon and rye and still continues to source bourbon and rye from elsewhere, but this is all their own whiskey that they distilled in the Russian River Valley of all places in California, a place much, much more known for Pinot Noir than bourbon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has the most beautiful nose.
Yeah,
that I can smell.
Yeah. Yeah, Stefan says dark chocolate cherries. I totally get you. Like it's almost into cherry hall notes or even into NyQuil notes in there for me. Jeff says bananas, brown sugar, the vegetal note of underripe fresh green chilies. That's a good call as well. Does have a bit of that mint and menthol cooling note in there along with the cherries.
Yeah, this is like it's just gonna echo everything that everyone has just said, but banana float, like the banana ice cream float with the chocolate, the pineapples, the syrup and everything, and the melted vanilla.
Cherry on top. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of it. That Dairy Queen float split.
Yeah. Jamie says cherry Kool-Aid flour powder. Whereas the Leopold brothers whiskey is like super bright and grain driven. There's more than the grain going on in here. This almost like, it makes me almost think of a wine cask finish, although I'm assuming being a bonded bourbon, that definitely is not the case. I'm guessing there's wine cask finishing happening in their other whiskeys based on the style, which actually, even not being a wine cask finish whiskey lover, typically I find their other stuff to be tremendous. But this one has a little bit more of a finish of versus the other stuff that I've had from their stuff as well. Really makes me want to try the rye that's bonded, just for
In
kicks.
our next tasting, we'll do the rye,
Yeah.
because I want to try the rye very much.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed on their website too, we haven't seen them yet, but they do cask strength versions now of the Monarch and their regular releases, which is really cool.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad thing, I don't think. Yeah. This is a really nice little bourbon.
Yeah.
And so the Grizzly Beast name, if you're wondering, like, why call it Grizzly Beast, why not just call it Redwood Empire Bottled and Bond? The reason is because of the trees, and it alludes to it on the label here. It's got this bear coming through the woods here. The San Francisco to Humboldt Bay, it's a giant stretch of forest line, and they have a vast, there's the types of trees and wildlife alone, like you could spend days and thousands of different species of trees, of animals, birds, insects, everything there. But notably for this, they're talking about the wood. So the region is home to like majestic redwoods, which is what they're mostly using to age their whiskey here. And other woods, and the name of the redwood is often called Grizzly Beast. They have two types called the sequoia and I'm going to say this wrong, Yosemite National Park. Is that right?
Yosemite, I think.
Thank you. See, I knew I was going to say it wrong. So with they're boasting about like 2 million leaves on the tree that comes out of a sequoia tree. And there's 375 feet of coastal redwoods located nearby. They're replanting trees. They're using trees. Yes, Jeff. And so they just want you to know that they're sourcing whiskey, but they're using local woods. And they're proud of their history, and like they're aware that it takes a long time to grow a tree, and you might get 2 casks out of it, or barrels in this instant. So it's important to look at all aspects of farming when it comes to making bourbon. It's not just about the grain, it's about the wood itself too. So very cool. I've never heard of a tree called a Grizzly Beast before, but I'm sure it's not the first time.
Yeah, that is such a cool nose.
The finish for me is like those red cherry hulls.
Yeah. Well, and this is me stretching, but there's something on the nose that reminds me of like buttered lobster right now, where it's like got this super buttery, maybe with a touch of paprika note to it. It is really cool stuff. Yeah,
That's good.
gorgeous whiskey. So
Very
Harmony,
nice.
did you prefer, and it's probably hard to tell with the COVID, but I'm guessing you prefer this over the Leopold brothers when comparing the bottled and bonds?
Just because I can taste more of this. Like I can taste the red fruit. On the other one, it was just like spicy and leather and like kind of tannic. And I'm struggling with those grain driven flavors right now. Like I tried a couple of scotches today and it didn't land for me. It was just kind of harsh and not exciting. I did try that South Pacific rum that you mentioned earlier, and that was very nice, very pretty, very fruity. And so I was able to taste that. But anything that's kind of more grain driven and grain focused, it's been a miss for me right now.
Yeah. Well, straight to brandy, I guess.
Oh gosh, I hope not. No. And I hope it comes back because I prefer my single malt aged in ex-bourbon so that the grain is more of the showpiece instead of the cask. I really hope it comes back. I did notice that last Christmas when I had COVID that my palate changed a lot. So I expect nothing less from this round. All right, our last bourbon is a Doc Swinsons exploratory cask.
Yeah.
Doc Swinsons is an independent bottler, and the exploratory cask series is amply named after the mind, the body, and the spirit. So La Mente, La Cuerpo, and Le Spirit, which is this one here. And it is part of what they're calling their alter ego triple cask series. So they do have alter ego bourbons, but the exploratory series is different. They also have an alter ego rye. And the reason for the alter ego concept is that all of their alter ego products are finished in an additional cask, whether it be sherry, rum, brandy, cognac, something other than the traditional American oak. Some people may love it, some may hate it. I get excited about it. Being a Scotch drinker, like finishes are all the rage. But I also think it makes for fun cocktails. It makes for a new experience, obviously, when sipping, more development in the glass. And for those people who think all bourbon tastes the same, it's not all going to taste the same when it's finished in something different. So it might open up the door for somebody who's just maybe not been enjoying the bourbon world, perhaps. So so the next one is Doc Swinson. This one is also bottled at cask strength. We're 57.35%, which we're getting hotter.
Yeah, Doc Swinson's is neat because I'm assuming based on the mash bills, you have the bottle in front of you. Does it say distilled in Indiana?
It does.
Yeah, the 36% rye mash bill is definitely one of the MGP mash bills or pardon me, Ross and Squibb mash bills. The 75% corn 21 rye must be as well.
Yeah. Did I send that slide to you? The last one there?
For that shows the bottle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that up again.
Thanks.
This one here?
That'd be it.
Perfect.
So yeah. So this is a blend of 2 casks married together and then finished in the ex cognac limousine oak. So blended.
Yeah, crazy amount of size difference between 225 and 600 liter casks too.
Yeah.
like 600 liters, that's beyond the size of a sherry butt, which is usually one of the larger casks or puncheon that we see on the whiskey side.
Are there no restrictions in the cognac world for casks, or is like bigger better?
I wonder if they were custom made or what the deal is. I guess they could use 600 liters. I thought 225 was the standard size, but maybe I'm wrong.
Is it, maybe it's a like hogshead of cognac?
Yeah. That's 2 hogsheads right there.
Mm-hmm. So I can't smell anything on this. And I don't want to add water to it just yet because, I mean, it's been offered in this ABV for a reason. So we'll give it a try first, and then maybe water will help open up the nose on it. But it's pretty cool. We've had Doc Swinson before in some of our past tastings. I think we did the straight rye. I think in our last or second last tasting, which was really nice. I really liked it. Eli was generous enough to share his Funky Drummer cask, which was a bourbon finished in Jamaican rum. And I loved it so much. I begged and begged and begged the importer to give me a case. And he finally did call me a month or two later and said, okay, I found one. You can have it. You can have the last case in Canada. So we do have one coming in. It's actually, I think, sitting in our allocation. So if you're interested, let me know and we can bring it in and put it on the shelf. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait. I think probably till next month, till we have some room, unless you're all feeling very thirsty and eager to buy some bourbons.
Yeah,
today.
this is a nice one, especially like our only essentially cast strength bottling of the night. Only one higher than 50% on the dot, 57.35% as Stefan says, and it is pretty smooth for that. Probably because we worked our way up to it partially, but it does have these great mint and melon notes to it. It's got this richness that is subtle but survives the finish as well. It is a cool bottle, and I've been really impressed with their stuff. They seem to have a keenness for cask finishing bourbon and rye that sets them apart, especially when they release it at higher strength.
Yeah, the Doc Swinson group. It's 4 friends that were offered like a small cachet of bourbon at one time, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they started blending them to come up with something that they would all enjoy instead of just taking one each. They decided they'd blend them and see what happened, and that's kind of how it all started for them. And they really look to the Scotch world to get their influence and ideas on finishes, which is how they started with their Ego series. They were looking at the Scotch world with all the sherry finishes and all the rages there, and they began mixing, and then over time buying any barrel that they could and just stashing them for the next opportunity. So I think that's pretty cool. Overall, it's a pretty young group of guys that are just excited about making their place in the bourbon world. And I agree, Evan, they've impressed me so far. I have 2 at home that are different. One is part of the Ego series that has a sherry, a PX, and Oloroso finish, and the other one that I have, I believe, is PX and Cognac finish. And the PX and Cognac is surprisingly spicy, and I didn't expect it to be that spicy with the PX there. I just thought it would take over and it'd be more like chocolates and rounded, and it's definitely more Cognac driven, which is fun.
Yeah, the menthol note there is really cool because it's not just this sharp menthol note. It's got this roundness and weird sweetness that comes along with it as well. Probably from the grapes coming into play. Really cool bourbon. So that is the lineup. Very cool lineup for this bourbon tasting and one rye tasting. Now that we've tried them all, we did put together a poll for you guys that I'll put live just so you guys can give your 2 cents and vote on your first and second favorites of the night.
Shoot, does anyone, well, I don't know, we have some big groups on camera. I was gonna say, do we have any leftover to do one quick roulette through? It's hard to say.
Yeah, we could, let's do that before we do the poll.
So quickly back to Rossville.
Wow, really big, like struck match note right off the hop now for me. On
It
the nose.
is, yeah.
And not sulfury, just like you just struck a match though, like you're looking to light a fire.
Yeah. Yeah, those like big fruity notes have settled and you're getting more of maybe that charred wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it still has that nice little bit of dill and such coming in on the palate.
Mhm.
Kentucky Owl. Still really nice nose, like definitely lighter than a lot of the other ones, but nicely put together.
Yeah, this is really nice. This is like super easy drinking. It make good cocktails.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's not a super expensive one either.
Yeah, which is nice because when you think of Kentucky Owl, you're like, all right, I got $200. Which one bottle do I buy?
Yeah.
But now you can grab a couple different bottles. All right,
Back to the
Cadenhead,
Cadenheads.
Seven Hill.
Usually I have leftovers in my tasting kit after doing one of these tastings, but this is just going to be 7 dead soldiers at the end of this one.
I hope Kate's ready.
Yeah.
Just stumbling up the stairs. Yeah, this is the first time I have like almost full glasses because it feels like sacrilege to drink it when I have no palate.
The Cadenhead, the tropical notes are still there, but the cherry note is that you more expect off of bourbon is coming out more now for me. Still a little bit of peach notes in there too.
I'm getting peach more than cherry for this one. Yeah.
Yeah, the palate still stays quite nice and tropical.
And it just kind of grips your mouth really nice. Like it doesn't quite coat the cheeks, or maybe I didn't take enough, but it you get this kind of sticky sweetness.
Yeah.
On the tongue.
Yeah, definitely not super dry for a 12-year-old, which is nice.
And I'm just stepping into the boutique 24 year, and this is nutty for me.
Yeah.
Not peanuts though. It's definitely, I think, almonds or
the almonds
maybe
and
macadamia even.
Yeah, macadamia I could see with that pina colada note, that makes sense, but also into like some really roasted hazelnuts on the nose for me right now, along with that leather note.
Like being on a deck.
Yeah.
Out in the woods, like specifically at like a cabin.
Almost like that.
Where is the cabin?
Yeah.
It smells like my really close family friend's cabin out at Christina Lake, because they have like 3 very old cabins built in like 1910. This is what that smells like to me, is being there at the cabin.
Is it the deck? Yeah, I was just gonna say like the deck after the rain.
Well, the deck after it rains, but even like the deck is just on the beach enough that it's like it gets a little bit of water.
Yeah, waterlogged.
Yeah. So like for me, that's what I get.
That's a great note. I definitely can relate to that.
All makes sense. This would be by bourbon standards, this would be tired old wood at this point. Very
good. All right, the Redwood.
Sorry, the
Blow the
Leopold.
nose on this, like, because I can smell it. It makes me so happy.
Not to the junction.
We skipped the Leopold there.
Ow, Winnie.
I drank it when you guys were talking. Let's do the Leopold.
Yeah. Going into kettle corn on the nose right now for me.
Smells salty to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that too. Kettle corn with just a little bit of white cheddar popcorn powder on it.
Yes.
The white cheddar for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tastes like going into a tool shed.
Or into like an old attic.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah,
musty,
it's
old.
musty and going into burlap sacks along with these what you
Yeah.
said there, Zach.
Yeah. Anybody want to play a game of horseshoes after this, or?
Okay, now on to the Redwood. It is very cool how different those two bonded bourbons are.
Mm-hmm. I would love to be in a bonded warehouse to see like how close these family casks are next to each other, and then like how different they are when they come out. Obviously,
Totally.
I know mash plays into it, but just sitting in the same house, how they're so different.
Stefan, you said kind of smells like Doritos. Are you talking about the Redwood Empire there? Because maybe it's a power suggestion, but I agree.
Like sweet chili heat without the heat.
Yes.
So the Leopold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no Leopold. Cool. The Leopold are like the Cool Ranch Doritos.
Yeah.
And since I already got it, I'm gonna stick with it. The Redwood Empire is into the sweet chili heat / opening up just a pack of regular Doritos.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, Harmony.
I know, I'm sorry. I like a Reba.
Harmony, I literally built a tasting around Doritos last summer.
Well, I'm glad I missed it.
I believe it was specifically around Cool Ranch Doritos.
It was. And it was around Chloe's guilty pleasure of eating Cool Ranch Doritos in
That's
the tub
right.
with a bottle of red wine.
Yeah. It
I've
was an
known
interesting.
you a year. I've
yeah, it
never
was
seen
a-
you eat
yeah.
Doritos.
It was an interesting place to
Well-
host a virtual tasting from. That's for sure.
Okay, let's not lie. I did it from my counter in my apartment.
That would be funny if you were like just in your swimsuit in a bathtub with like wine glasses lined up on the side.
We can make it happen.
Hot tub
Yeah.
tasting?
Yeah, we could do it in the tub upstairs, which is probably large enough that I could sit in it, and I
Oh man,
could also be joined by like a co-host. We could have the bottles.
that just sounds like the perfect setup for a terrible Darwin Ward. Is someone was killed during a virtual tasting watching it on their laptop.
Yeah, you thought it was
Bernadette's,
the toaster, but it was the plugged-in laptop.
Harmony Bernadette thinks there's hope for you. Maybe you'll develop a taste for Doritos after COVID.
Maybe, but
Yeah.
I like Arribas more than. That's just me.
Well, yeah, it is just you.
Harmony, we could do a whiskey for the bathtub tasting, because Harmony and I both like to take bubble baths, and we'll like send each other photos of the drams that we have while in the tub.
Yes,
So I
we
feel like
do.
that could be a good tasting.
That's,
We do it lush and whiskey.
is this the next cheese bun hashtag? Is we need to do a hashtag tub dram?
Yeah. Or like hashtag bath
We can
salt.
have cheese buns.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
haven't received cheese buns in a while.
You know, I'm not even upset about that, Jeff. I think you need
I'm
to
upset
send
about it.
us some samples of these teas you keep talking about. 'Cause
I do like tea.
I love
Yeah.
tea, and I don't
And
know
not just-
anything
not
about
just
half
a-
of the
a
words you
poster.
say.
Not a poster of tea, but some actual tea.
So, like,
Be careful
little
what you wish
teas.
for. Jeff, we love tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you that aren't enjoying the color commentary, I've put up the vote there.
Bubbles and bubbles.
Mm. Yeah, and then the
But
last
those
one
levels are
again,
boring, 'cause,
the
like,
Doc
what's going
Swinson
on
finished in cognac.
Yeah,
Whiskey though?
Mm.
it's a really nice whiskey. It's
So
I think the Boutique Heaven Hill might be, or sorry, the Boutique Bourbon of
Mhm.
unknown origin might be a little bit more complex, but this is I really like the strength this is at.
Yeah. Lester and group and the Stash and group, you're gonna have to choose one as a group, but I'd be happy to hear in the chat what your opinions are, or just unmute yourselves and tell me what each person would vote for, because unfortunately you only get one vote.
Yeah, because this is an American whiskey tasting, we do this by electoral collage, vote wise. So not every vote is equal. It's more weighted and based on the state you're in, literally. But we'll hopefully have some commentary and see what you guys can say after this.
I think that could also be related to our own electoral system, actually. So, I mean, I do have the degree now. I know quite a bit.
Ah, well, it took her 91 minutes to drop it.
I worked hard for that.
I know you did. All right, who
It's
hasn't
like
voted?
yeah, we're at 12 of 13, so I think we'll give them 30 seconds, and if they don't want to chime in, that's fine.
Jeff, I'm voting for you, buddy.
You don't get to vote forever.
Well,
you just kind of conquer.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
If we ever do a vote on Jeff, that Jeff is the only option, is what it comes down to.
Jeff will make sure that everyone gets cheese buns and tea. So
Yeah,
great emperor.
Or a reasonable facsimile of might be two-dimensional.
I'm clearly
you might
the
not have great
spokesperson
health
for our
care.
crowd.
No
Okay,
healthcare, but cheese buns.
Lester and group has something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Try to encourage them to give you their feedback, but
there's a few.
go ahead.
Yeah, a few. What's the word?
So
I'm surprised that song didn't get more.
The Cadenhead was definitely the best one.
Cool.
That was so smooth, so easy to drink.
Smell like AM tarps.
No,
Other one.
But then what was the other one?
That last one, that cognac, the rye started.
The one that was finished in the cognac casks
Yep.
was really
That was
nice
a good
too.
one.
Peter also said he liked the first one you started with, the rye.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Any specific reason?
So Lester and crew, it seems like there's less people there than there was at the start.
Rips going on in the kitchen.
Okay. I was worried that everybody else was like already under the table or something.
No, I'll round them up. One moment. Yeah, go get
Nice. Thanks for the thumbs up.
What are you looking at? What's
They would like your feedback on the
Oh, my
evening.
favorite was the Cadenhead.
Cool.
Why?
It was had a soft nose. It had a really smooth in the palate,
Yeah.
and the aftertaste, like it just lingered and was, yeah, it was beautiful.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Unfortunately, the 24-year one was really good too.
Very,
very smooth.
I got over the 24-year-old.
That's true.
It
The
was good.
Cadenhead?
Yeah. And what was the last one? That was the
Don
Doc Swinson.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was my second.
Yeah.
Evan, do you have the screenshot from our website of all the bottles so we can share the prices?
Yeah, I will actually. I'll just put it up on the web too, or the web link for everybody, and then I'll share that. Just give me a sec here.
Yeah, because Evan's been really great at creating these links within the tasting that combines all the bottles that we tried tonight into one link. So you can kind of look through. He just dropped it in the chat, so you can give it a click and see the products that we've tried tonight. And at the same time, there they are, not in any specific order,
Yeah.
but the pricing and the bottles of what we had. So
Yeah. So I'll just go through quickly for 1 to 7 here. So the Rossville Union, the one that I'm kind of highlighting here that's gone gray, is 105.99. That's the rye. We need to put rye in the title there because it just says master crafted whiskey, but we'll get to that. Next up was the Kentucky Owl Wiseman, which is actually one of the more frugal bottles of the night, which is surprising because it does say Kentucky Owl on the label. It is $75, and I was really impressed with that one. That's really good stuff. Next up would be the Cadenhead Heaven Hill, which is a little bit higher end, but it is a 12-year-old bourbon as well. $185. After that would be the the boutique bourbon from Unknown Origins. That might be Four Roses or Wild Turkey or Heaven Hill or who knows where, but whatever it is, it's darn good and darn old, for $300. After that would be the two bonded. So the Leopold brothers here is $117, and then the Redwood Empire Grizzly Beast is $122. And last of the night was the Doc Swinsons Le Spirit, which we can get 6 more bottles of. If you're interested in it, just let us know. It is $135.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so a pretty nice range of whiskeys and a good range of prices.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty good selection vote wise here. The boutique did win with 5 votes for number 1. Also came in second place for second place, or for the second favorite as well. Just about everything got votes except for the Rossville and the Doc Swinsons on the first round, and
But they got verbal votes on
they did
the second round.
absolutely. So pretty good spread there, and very cool lineup. I was really happy with the lineup as is. I think we got for bourbon especially a pretty good range of styles there.
Yeah, if you are interested in purchasing any of these bottles, we do offer 10% off. So for those of you who like the boutique, that's $30 off. Just put in your comments at checkout Bourbon and Beyond, and we'll remind the ladies that offers you a 10% discount off the whiskeys that you've tried tonight.
Yeah. So I unfortunately have to run, but are you wanting to stick around, Harmony, or?
No, I have dishes to do and laundry to fold.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Harmony for fighting through the difficult palette to work with right now and running us through this as well. Thanks to Chloe and Zach for joining us, and thank you for commentary. Jeff, of course, I would be remiss without thanking your fact checking. And Stefan, thank you for the puns, and thank you, Shannon, and everybody else from Invermere and beyond for joining us. It was a fun tasting, and we'll definitely have to do this again on the bourbon sign soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time. If you have any ideas or bourbons and ryes you want to try, hit us up on social media and we will put them in the tasting. I guarantee if you tell me what you want, we'll put it in there. So
yeah, or I'll veto it and put in something I like. One of the other.
Or me, because I'm the social media person and I can just.
Yeah.
All right, bye, Stefan.
Yeah, pass it on, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.